Hi, it's Angie from Canterbury Trails Farm, and today I'm going to start some of the repairs on the 1910 Edwardian dress. Mostly what this consists of is reattaching some of the lace that has separated. And I have inserted a panel, this is all on the inside of the dress, of just plain white cotton, and I've fitted inside. It looks tighter right now than it will be when I get done sewing. I'm going to turn, this one's a selvage edge, which was nice because I don't have to do any folding. And this one I'm going to fold it under as I sew, so there's no raw edges on the outside, because this dress was all sewn with French seams, and it is a very nice internal look. There's no raw edges to anything, except for this middle panel, which they used the selvage edges. And then I have attached a couple patches, just because the way the hole wasn't a hole as much as where the fabric had just broken down, the fibers in the cotton had just broken down and decayed, and so the fabric was just began to separate. So I couldn't really sew the fabric very well without unravel, and because it was just fragile in that location for some reason. So I'm just going to do a very light stitched patch over it. Cotton is an amazing fabric, and it holds its strength for really centuries, and that's why I'm able to put that in the diluted bleach solution for just about a minute, because cotton is so durable. A lot of other fabrics, silks and satins and chiffons, just stuff like that, just sort of fall apart and just decay. But cotton really stands up to time, and you'll find a lot of crocheted tatted cotton laces that will just last forever. You can bleach those and put them on new pillowcases and so on and so forth, just because the cotton is so amazing. So I'm just going to do some, this is probably going to be a mostly speeded up video of me sewing, because it's going to probably be hours and I'm not going to be able to consecutively sit here and work on it. So just to give you a taste of me working on it. And then at the end of this video, I'll also show you some of the as accurate as possible undergarments to go with the video. And I've already sewn them and finished them, but I want to demonstrate, just let you look at the ones I have already made, and my daughter modeling all of these things. Okay, so I'm working on the lace here. You can see how this is what I'm talking about by separated. So the very top, there's a little bit of the remnant of the lace, and then it's come away, so some of it's still sewn in there. So this has been repaired, this line right here. So what I'm trying to do is, if you notice, like I missed one here, all these little lines like in the net. So I'm trying to take a stitch from one area to the next and mimic that by making a loose stitch and then moving up a row until I can finally do another stitch along the line of each of the netting like lines, until I can finally anchor my stitch on this cotton seam hem right here. I am not a lace maker, so I remake the lace, but since it is in a net format, it's easy to mimic the lace. So I'm just sort of following the path along, and I don't think it's too noticeable when you move back. So I've already done all of this. And some spots, like so, you see there's two missing ones, so I'll go in and put those two missing ones in there. Some spots are easy, like this one will be easy. This one's going to be a whole length here. So I've done this whole section here. finished with all the repairs on the dress, and I have ironed it. And a few of these little blacks, this actually from the iron. I need to go pick all those off. Where the iron hit over like the hooks and eyes, and just scraped it off. So the lace turned out really nice. I just have all the lace, and it was the easiest to repair. I replaced a couple of either the hooks or the eyes. So this was the badly deteriorated, I don't know if you can see that, parts of the cuff that were just not repairable because the fabric was just completely decayed. I thought about doing like a fusible web inside, but I didn't want it really stiff. So what I did instead, I took a piece of nice, very nice Indian cotton and I sort of made a cuff and I sewed it inside, and then I stitched around wherever there. I need to trim a few of those little threads off wherever the deterioration was. So I just sort of stitched it to the cuff. So it looks fairly good. I mean, from a distance you don't really notice it because of the white. On the inside, where I had a lot of fraying types of holes, I didn't want to patch the front of the dress where it was going to be really noticeable. So what I did is I inserted, and you saw me working on that, a panel, and I sewed it to the inside. So you can see it's a little darker than the rest of the dress, but it works. It almost looks like, you know, it was like a thicker piece of fabric where the embroidery is done. We had a few areas on the bottom of the dress that I didn't want to patch. What I just did is I ended up finally stitching around where the tears were, this in together and around the tears, just so they wouldn't get any worse. On the parts where I had to patch, and just there was no way around it because the split in the fabric was so bad that the rest of the fabric around it at risk for also ripping. Put a patch under it, and I finally sewed, and then I tried to repair using a darning method back and forth, like a weaving, sewing, as much as I could. These were a little bit rougher because on this one we had an actual just separation in a line, like a rip. But on these we actually had holes and jagged areas, so it was a little bit tougher. And probably because whatever this stain was, it's probably been scrubbed harder. I did not do anything to that stain because of the proximity to these tears. But I'm guessing in the past, when this dress was actually being worn, someone tried to get it, and so that didn't put a hole in it, but it weakened the fibers around it. So overall, I'm very happy with this dress. So you can see that it turned out very nice, I think. So let's look at the under things that I made, all the luscious lace and underwears and stuff. So the first thing I wanted to do was get a pair of shoes. Everything was pretty expensive. So my daughter's a dancer, so I ended up finding these. They look like high button kind of shoes, but so anyway, so she could use them again for dancing, but so just something that we could have on. In fact, we might end up not even using them, but that's what I got. You would wear like a longer shift against your body under your corset, but for this purpose we didn't want to do all that, so we just made a small camisole that will fit under the corset. And I went ahead and bought a corset. First I thought, oh, I'm gonna make a corset, and then I've made corsets for my dolls, but you're talking, you know, for a 10-inch doll, so it's a lot different. So anyway, I just went ahead and bought a white. So that would be that. So then I made the corset cover, which was a lot of fun because it was so pretty. And I did this was an actual vintage, if you watched my video on making nightgowns from these vintage camisole corset cover crocheted yoke, that's what this is, and it is a very pretty one, I think. And I had some pink pearl, mother of pearl buttons, again for the doll sewing. I have all that stuff. And this was just a very fine lace piece right here. And I did a drawstring waist. Insert, there's all kinds of insert laces and stuff I've done here, making the casing, and it just was a lot of fun to make that because it was just so pretty. Then I made some by hand. I stitched these all by hand using a pattern. Some split crotch bloomers, because that's what they would have worn. And again, I had fun with the vintage lace and the lace bottom, so there's that. And then I sort of cheated a little on the petticoat because it was going to be actually a little bit more to make my own buying the fabric. So what I did is just bought a very plain white cotton petticoat, and then I had this wonderful length of nice vintage, well, antique really, lace that I sewed onto the ends, and I just sort of did a decorative slant embroidery stitch all the way across to add to the prettiness factor of it. So that was a lot of fun. And the waist, I did cheat and I made a casing, but instead of just putting ribbon in it, I did put elastic in it. This is by far my favorite, I think, piece that I made. And this was all vintage fabrics. The cotton was not vintage cotton for the bloomers or the pantaloons, but the lace is vintage or antique. This is all antique materials except for the white ribbon in the casing. This was also this was vintage cotton. The outsides are actually, you could sort of see through the waist portions. We have the Edwardian dress finally all done. My daughter, she is modeling it, and it fit just perfect. And she's wearing the dress for us, and I did iron it, but it's that cotton fabric and it like immediately gets wrinkled, so I don't know how they did it with those big cast iron irons back then. But as you see, it was a perfect fit. So here we have the 1910 Edwardian white cotton dress, and as I was telling the kids that I think it looks pretty good for a 110-year-old dress. And that concludes the restoration of the Edwardian dress series. Thanks for coming along. Our next restoration project will be a 1920s beaded silk wedding dress. So this has been Angie from Canterbury Trails Farm. Thanks for joining us today. Bye.